Hello, I'm Grant Flora, and this will be my presentation on Roxane Gay. And those are two pictures of Roxane, as you can see. So, a brief history about Roxane's life. She was born to two immigrants in America. She was born to two Haitian immigrants. She was born October 15th, 1974, and her father was a civil engineer, which um, caused her to be moving around a lot as a child. Her mother Nicole was also a homemaker. From a young age, Roxane was very naturally gifted intellectually. From the age of 4, she started writing stories, which is pretty impressive considering the fact that most kids are just learning how to do the basic skills of writing when they're 4. Um, she was, as you can see, the Phillips Exeter Academy. That's a picture of the boarding school she went to, which is a very exclusive institution, which is a further testament to her intelligence at a young age. The Phillips Exeter Academy is located in New Hampshire, and from there she went to Yale, which its reputation precedes itself, is just as if not more prestigious. Um, she is a lesbian, which I thought was pretty interesting when hearing the story of how when she was attending Yale, her junior year, she decided to run off with a guy, which any information on the guy was pretty limited. But, after a year of tracking her down, her parents finally found her in Nebraska. And then after all that, giving up on Yale and all that just to find out that she's a lesbian was pretty interesting to me. She also has a PhD in rhetoric and technical communication. When her parents found her, she went and got her bachelor's at Nebraska or her master's at Nebraska in creative writing. And then she attended Michigan Technical University and she got her PhD in the rhetoric and technical communication. While she's attending MTU, Michigan Technical University, she was very active in the college community. She started a newspaper short story type of thing called a Pank, and she started with a professor. And along with that, she was also a very successful short story essay writer, mainly using motivation from her experiences as a Black lesbian feminist. She was so good that she actually won the Best American Short Story Award. To this day, she is still very active and very successful. She has written many award-winning books, which I'll kind of get more to in the later parts. But, New York Times bestsellers, other pretty notable awards. She was one of the first female Black writers for Marvel, which is very impressive. She wrote on the pretty notable comic Black Panther: World of Wakanda. Even after that, she has talked at many universities. She's taught at many universities, and she has a podcast that's pretty successful. It's called Here to Slay, which is a pretty funny name. She is a third-wave feminist, somewhat modern. I would say that she falls more specifically, she is a intersectionalist and a liberal feminist. And the reason I think she falls underneath that category, or the liberal feminism category, is because obviously she believes that women should be treated equally, and that they should have an equal opportunity. But the way she thinks that these changes need to be made is through changing the world socially and through policy changing and law changing within the government, which she is very active in. She's also, from her story, she's very active in the social aspect as well. Um, and, as an daughter to immigrants, as a Black lesbian feminist, she sees as all of these as a part of herself, and she believes that all of those are points that should be treated, all part of why she is who she is and why she's a feminist. As I previously mentioned, she believes in social and economic justice. These are kind of more towards the her liberal feminist beliefs. You can really see the economic side in her book An Untamed State, where she's young. Well, the main person in the story is a young girl, and I imagine that it's based on some of her experiences, as the fact that the young girl is born from two Haitian parents, and that when they go on vacation, she gets taken, and it's just a whole ordeal about how her father handles the situation, about how even when after the situation, the experiences she has, and just more specifically to the economic side is just how coming from wealth has affected her beliefs and how it's, just influenced her. And obviously I already talked about that social part. And this goes more back to her intersectionalist beliefs, the racial equality, gender equality, just all that stuff is very important to her and very important to her cause. And this is more so about a different book, but she stressed the importance of listening. In her book, The Bad Feminist, she talks about how, just being, for lack of a better term, open-minded and being perceptive to different ideas that people have and being able to listen to what people have to say and to be able to use that to change kind of your thinking and use those ideas that you hear with your ideas, which is all very interesting, but she really stresses listening. And she has she's written a lot of different books. As you can see, those are just 3 examples of a lot of short stories, a lot of essays. Her 2 probably biggest ones was Bad Feminist and An Untamed State. Like I said, she's written many essays that have had major cultural impacts. One essay that really stood out to me as I was doing research on her is called What We Hunger For. And it's a short story about her being gang raped at 12, which is obviously despicable. But I used to listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and reading and listening to that stuff is always super eye-opening to me. Just like the depravity of what humans are capable of doing, and just and the way she is able to open up to that experience is pretty impressive. She's also founded and led a lot of different organizations, as I've already mentioned some of them. Some of them are called, that in college that she started, was the Rumpus, Pank, Pen America, and Substack. Another pretty notable accomplishment was the fact that she started her own publishing company called Tiny Hardcore Press, and it just kind of helps her get even more reach to different audiences and stuff like that. And I think her biggest accomplishment, in my opinion, is just how much of a role model and leader she is, and just how good of an example she is to these next generations coming up, even in my generation. Very inspirational. Even to me, someone who doesn't relate to a lot of the experiences she has, just the way she is able to pull from those ideas is very, very enlightening. So this is kind of like a criticism that mainly that she's had with herself on kind of like a retrospect. She says that she isn't very well versed as far as in the feminist language and the feminist literature, that she could be more versed in that. And that a lot of that's highlighted in her book. And I think she stresses that so much. As you can see, that's a picture of the Black Wakanda or Black Panther War of Wakanda comic book. But the reason she stresses that so much is because it's important to be able, like I mentioned earlier, it's important to be able to adapt your beliefs and your ideas and just be open-minded, but not flowing with whatever people or majority are saying. You know, you have to walk that line. So I think she's very important, and 3 of the main points I have is some of the adversity that she has overcome. I think, as I mentioned earlier, she's a great example for people to look up to. She has a very interesting story to tell. I mean, just with being born into 2 immigrants and dropping out of Yale and then coming back, and I mean, basically being born with no privilege, overcoming that and being as successful as she is today is just a testament to her her personality and her grit. And I think her 3 main characteristics that really stood out to me was, as I previously mentioned, grit, her open-mindedness, and her belief in herself. I think that obviously, as I mentioned, the grit part, but being open-minded but also believing in yourself is just, it's a hard balance, but it is important. And I think she's a great example of how when you walk that line, it can be, you can just be so successful. And not just as monetarily wise, but as a person, just a great example. And more of a lower level is her story is just super interesting. As far as, I mean, some of the aspects I mentioned earlier, as far as dropping out of Yale, but there's other stories that she's had that are just super, you know, intriguing and fascinating. And I think a lot of people will be able to read and find that interesting, and also be able to pull and create their own, like do some of their own reflection. And that's my bibliography, and that's it. Thank you for listening.